Patrice,
Yes.
what are the going rates on gigs?
Okay. This can seem like such a simple question, but there's like so many factors. So, like a lot of this stuff, it's not just like, oh, $100 to $1,200. Like, it's going to depend on your area, right? And so you want to, I do not think it's a bad idea to reach out to other people that you admire, that are in a similar way to you, like lane, genre, so forth, to kind of see if they don't mind sharing with you what they normally get. But there's going to be factors, right? The things that you can kind of think about when it comes to that is, how long of a set am I going to do? Am I getting paid to do a half an hour, 45 minutes, 3 45-minute sets? Are they looking for full bands? Are they looking for one person? Is this a bar that, is going to pay you a couple hundred with tips included? Or is this a fair where it has a built-in audience and they are going to give you X amount of dollars with tips included? Sometimes, like with the restaurants, you can kind of say, hey, ticket sales, I will take X amount off of the ticket sales. So there's a bunch of different things that go into what the actual costs that you get paid. And it depends on time that you're doing it, how many people are in your show, how is your experience, right? So if you've never done anything, you could use the starting ones as a way to build your resume and make some money, but you might not make the same as someone who's been at it for a really long time, who has that expertise and has that name that can draw in a crowd. One thing that I think is really important to talk about is a lot of people, when they are gearing up to move from a small town or smallish city, right, and go to the New Yorks, Nashvilles, LAs of the world, right? Maybe in Austin, Texas, that's a pretty big music hub. So what happens a lot of times in these places is all of a sudden, a lot of people end up a lot of the places, knowing that there's so much entertainment, they kind of exploit the situation. I know, like in Nashville, it's like, I haven't been there, talking to Whitney, other people, like, every restaurant has music, and what can they say? Oh, you can get exposure, which can be true. I think tips, but they're not paying you up front for that. So it's something to consider when you are thinking to make the move to these places in order to further your career. If you haven't started anything, a few pieces of advice I give is maybe it's best to hold off for a little bit and build your resume locally, because there's going to be a lot more places around here that are going to be forgiving of new artists, and even making some money in order to get ready to go. Like when you go there, you're probably going to have to bank on something else. And even around here as you're starting, you might have to, bank on another job that isn't necessarily in the music industry. But that's something to really consider, is when you go to these places, they typically don't have a budget, and they're using the card of, you are in Nashville, you're in New York, and there's tons of artists here, and they can get anyone if you don't take it. And so a lot of people end up by cave into that. So one thing too that I've told a few people that I've worked with that have moved to the bigger cities is look at the outskirts, right? Sometimes we think, oh, like it has to be Nashville, but when it comes to what is around there, 45 minutes, maybe an hour 15, hour and a half, I don't know how far you're willing to go, what your transportation is like, but that's something to consider as well, is like, can I ultimately find other places in the area that do pay for entertainment? And you could think about reaching out to those places. But when it comes to the bigger city, that is one of the things that isn't always the best, is they tend to exploit the artist in that way. So yeah, and to that too, I definitely am a big advocate of building your resume around where you're at, because you're typically going to find the local newspapers, the local venues wanting to root for the local artist, and so they'll be a lot more forgiving, and that way you build up your resume. So when you go into these bigger cities, you've kind of built your foundation, and you've also built some confidence, which is really, really important, and something else I will touch on in the future.